Bog is one of those late 70s movies that's trying to be a 50s B movie. Honestly, it does a pretty good job. A monster you barely see, main characters that do all the wrong things, and some scientists spitting out technical jargon every chance they get. Is there anything unique about Bog? Well, let's find out. Bog opens up in a bog. Go figure. We see this guy using dynamite to fish. A bit unconventional, but hey, it seems to get the job done. But little does he know that he just awoken a terrible creature. Sometime later, a group pulls into the bog to do some camping. The guys are all excited for a weekend of fishing and drinking. The girls, not so much.
You know, we're having a wonderful time watching you two bozos suck up booze out here in the boonies.
All they do is complain. I get it. You don't want to be here, but you can at least make the best of it.
Yeah, it's a terrific idea.
In the morning, they decide to split up and catch some fish. These guys take the boat, and the others stay on the shore. The guys on the boat hit something in the water, and you think, uh-oh, they're goners. But it's actually the chick on land that's attacked first. They all go looking for her, while the other girl tries to hide in the car. But soon enough, she becomes the bog monster's next victim. The men all rush over to the police station where they meet Sheriff Neal and Dr. Brad Wednesday. These men don't seem to be too surprised to hear about the attack, knowing that there's been stories about the lake for years. Even so, they send some men to go look for their lost wives, and it's not long before they're found, dead. The coroner says that they were completely drained of blood, so the town calls in a pathologist, Dr. Ginny Glenn, who works with Brad to try to figure out what happened. They do eventually manage to figure out that something sharp went down the girls' throats directly into their hearts and sucked them dry. But what animal does that? The only thing they can think of is...
Could we have a Dracula running loose out there?
More people are attacked, this time a police officer, and the husbands decide to put this situation in their own hands. Arm up and fight whatever's out there. However, because they're not from this state, they can't legally buy guns. That's where Wallace Fry comes into play.
Wallace Fry can get you anything you want.
He kind of reminds me of Torgo from Manos, the Hands of Fate.
I am Torgo. I take care of the place while the master is away.
He'll sell them anything for $1. After giving them some guns and ammo, he shows the men to an old witch's hut out in the middle of the bog. Cool. We get a monster and a witch in this movie. Once inside, all I can say is, nice place. Finally, Adriana, the witch, shows up and speaks in riddles. She tells them a story of something living in the swamp, feeding on blood while awake, and then sleeping, hibernating once it's full. But too many people are coming into the forest and waking it up, so it feeds again. The whole time she talks, however, she doesn't act scared, but more like she has an adoration for the creature.
And once satisfied, it sleeps.
At this point, Fry's had enough. Scared, he books it out of there against Adriana's wishes. She knows that as long as they're with her, they're safe. But he doesn't listen. He runs out into the woods to be eaten. I gotta admit, this is quite an effective scene.
And who would believe the old hag of the woods?
Back in town, the scientists continue to work this all out, but really getting nowhere. So they decide to stop for dinner, and we get a romantic subplot that starts to form as these two old geezers start making out. The next day, the husbands go back to the sheriff wondering what he's gonna do. They tell him the story Adriana told him, and it seems to back up what they've been thinking as well. The guys also tell the sheriff it's time to blow up the bog. So he does. No regard to any other local wildlife. Well, big surprise here, it doesn't work. If anything, it only ticks the creature off more, and it kills the husbands and another officer. Man, the sheriff's losing men like flies.
Son of a...
To try to combat this, he orders the lake and surrounding trails to be closed. However, they don't do a very good job, letting some bikers ride right on in. Ginny and Brad continue to work out what this thing is, discovering that it's 100% cancerous. So there's that. Some guy shows up with some scuba equipment and they dive down into the depths. They eventually find this egg sac looking thing, but shortly after loading it into the boat, both men are attacked and pulled under. In the lab, they study the egg sac, saying that it's neither egg or seed, but something in between, which just makes no sense. They also hypothesize that this creature came with the glaciers millions of years ago. It was frozen under the ice, waiting to warm up, waiting to feed. At the bog, the bikers are attacked. You didn't see that coming, did you? But one actually does manage to get away, and she draws a sketch of what she saw. But, of course, us, the audience, aren't privy to this information. Why not show it? If you don't want us to see the cheap rubber suit, then at least let us see a drawing of it. The monster walks all the way into town, breaks into the lab, and steals its babies back. That's when the doctors come in and see that it's missing, knowing that the creature came for them.
It came here for them.
They know enough is enough, and they have to devise a plan to try to capture this thing. It drinks blood, so maybe they could make a blood vaporizer that would lure it in. Then they could douse it with some chemicals to try to take it out. So that's their plan. They gather up a team and head out, starting up the vaporizers which shoot blood up into the air. It's not long before the monster comes looking for its next meal. But then, for some reason, Sheriff Neil runs right into the bloodthirsty creature and is quickly killed. Good job. The others open fire on it, shooting all this foamy stuff, covering the creature, which eventually knocks it out, and they take it back to the lab. Now, with the bog monster in their custody, they call in some help, John, to get a second opinion. He just has to see it for himself, and even after, he still doesn't believe it. He asks for DNA and wonders how Adriana, the witch, is all connected to this. Why didn't it attack her? She lives in the woods right next to it. Well, they run a sample from both of them and find out that it's almost identical. What ended up happening is the creature can not only suck your blood, but also inject humans with its blood, changing their DNA, making them a compatible mate. This also affects the brain, making them a willing subject. But Adriana's dead now, killed during the attack on the monster. It needs a new female to mate with. And I think it just found her. After a little fight, it takes Ginny back to the bog. Hey, that'd be a pretty good name for a sequel, don't you think? Bog 2, Back to the Bog. Anyway, it hasn't injected her with its blood yet, so the men rush over to try and save her. But are they too late? No, they get there just in time. The final nail in the coffin is when a car comes creaming in and pins the monster against a tree, catching it on fire and eventually killing it. But is that it for the bog monster? Don't forget about the eggs. And that was Bog. What'd you think? A good attempt at a 50s creature feature? Or a boring movie? I couldn't help but notice how old the main characters are. Now, that doesn't bother me, it's just in stark contrast to what you usually get. I mean, in every other movie, you'd have a couple 20-somethings making out over dinner, and our hero would be a buff guy straight out of college. No, I'm not really complaining, it's just something I happen to notice. One benefit of using seasoned actors is you get some truly chilling moments. The part with the witch in the woods describing the creature was pretty effective. And if you didn't catch on, Gloria DeHaven plays both Ginny and the witch, and she did a good job. I also like Sheriff Neil. His angry, gruff attitude often mixed with a sense of, I don't care, do whatever you want. You want to blow up the lake? Let's do it. The biggest problem with this movie is the monster, or lack thereof, and the technical jargon thrown around by the doctors. Now, I get they're super smart, but why do they have to go on and on about the periodic table and all these different elements when it all boiled down to we're dealing with a living organism? That being said, the lore around the monster is pretty cool. Frozen under a glacier for millions of years, then it uses a proboscis to suck its victims dry, all while making women fall in love with it. There's a lot to that, and it works. Bog is good for one of those late-night monster movie marathons that you're gonna eventually fall asleep to. I give it 1.5 old people making out of 4.
This lake ain't seen action in years.
Oh, man, the way these women are acting, we ain't gonna see action in years either.